ABC Sport Digital Radio, your home of cricket.
When the game's just begun and they're looking for a run, there's just one voice for the cricket, so they say. He's everything to cricket, cricket's everything to him, you know. The game is not the same without McGilvray. From a lusty cover drive, the one that brings the crowd alive, to a gentle push behind square leg, a ball that takes the middle.
The first half of the 60s, obviously, was some fantastic cricket, with the Tide Test, the series against the West Indies, the Manchester Test of 61, Peterborough in 64. But you can't say that about the second half of the 60s, between, say, 65 and 70.
No, well, we ran into a lot of drawn games then, Norman, against all nations. We were not really winning, and I don't think we had the inspiration that Benno was able to provide. And other captains had different thoughts. I know many captains say, you go out, if we can't win, we won't lose. That's not an approach of Benno. And so I think we ran into a little bit of a stagnant period there when captains were not prepared to take a risk and go out and win. And they would think about it. I know they'd say we mustn't lose for Australia. I can applaud that. They're playing for their country, as were England and other nations. But I thought the attitude then was quite different to what Benno introduced in 1960.
Well, the character of the game changed in 1960 with Richie Benno. It also changed drastically in the 70s, and an unforgettable moment would be the 7th Test, the only one ever played, was England-Australia in Sydney in 1971, and here's what happened.
7 for 178, and the new batsman will be Terry Jenner, and he's waiting for Snow, who's coming in from the northern end, and Jenner is hit on the head. Jenner getting a short delivery outside the line of the leg stump. He backed away towards square leg. The ball followed him across and hit him on the head just above the left ear, and I can see blood starting to come out of that wound. The England skipper Illingworth, wicketkeeper Alan Knott signalling to the dressing room, and I've got no doubt that Terry Jenner's going to be asked to leave the field. Jenner very wonky on his feet. He's being carried off by Peter Lever, and there's Bob Willis marching along carrying Jenner's bat, but Jenner retired hurt. And now Lou Rowan, the umpire, is taking action. He's had a few words to Snow. Illingworth questions it. Now, umpire Rowan has signalled across towards the square leg umpire Tom Brooks, and he said that he's giving John Snow a warning. Ray Illingworth is adamant that there's only been one short pitch delivery in this over, and he's not happy with the situation at all. Now, John Snow has gone down to the fence, and he's been grabbed. A nasty incident here. One of the spectators has reached over the fence and is grabbing Snow. He swings a left hand at Snow's head, Snow backing away. And fortunately, this irate spectator has been grabbed by some of his mates behind the fence and dragged down to his sitting position again. Now, Bob Willis has come across from mid-on. He's there to protect Snow. A lot of cans being thrown onto the field. Now, Illingworth coming across, and it looks as though he might change positions. It looks as though he's leaving Willis down to mid-on and he wants to move Snow. And no, Illingworth signalling to his team. They're starting to walk off the field. Illingworth is leading his team from the field.
Well, that was the famous walk-off, or infamous walk-off, by England's team in 1971, an electric situation. Do you know what went on really out there in the middle and behind the scenes?
Yes, I know a little bit about it. That I don't think in the first place Illingworth should have walked off. The action of that spectator was a very bad one. But Snow need not have gone as close to the fence as he did. He could hear them abusing. Well, they abuse them on many grounds all over the world. It happens in England too. I think it was a little bit hasty of Bray. He could have called them together and say, look, we want those bottles and things cleared off, Mr. Rowan, have it done. That would have been done. Well, it's happened in the West Indies. It's many times I've seen it there, but because there, I suppose, were different people who were not as excitable as they are. But that's as much as I know of it, that it was an unfortunate thing that he took him off, but then I thought that it must have been good judgment by the umpires to go in, particularly Tom Brooks. He went in trying to settle Illingworth down, and then in the dressing room they said, look, I will not go back until that rubbish is cleared. And Rowan and Brooks said, OK, we'll attend to that. But we're going out, Mr. Illingworth, and the bottles will be cleared, but we're going out. And that's the message they gave him, meaning to say, if you don't come out, it's a forfeit to Australia.
Well, that was the end of quite a remarkable match and a remarkable series in a sense, and also the start of a very good new era for Australia. It was Ian Chappell's first match as captain. In that series, Greg Chappell, Dennis Lilly and Rod Marsh all started to play for Australia. And the Australian team there became very strong. And I'm going to play a little extract from the 1974 series against England over a second test in Perth. A good friend of yours called Doug Walters is facing up to Bob Willis in the last over of the day's play.
Here's the second last ball. And one ball to go to end the day, and no, they're not. They were thought of taking a single. Doug Walters, 97. Here's the last ball of the day's play. He's hit it, could be four. Magnificent shot. It's out to the boundary. A six, was it? A six. A six. Walters, 103. What a fantastic finish. One of the greatest finishes we've ever seen to a day's play in Australian Test cricket. Doug Walters, 100 in the session. He hit the last ball of the day's play for six. And he's on to 103. Ross Edwards, 79. Australia, 4 for 352. And Walters, he scored exactly 100 runs in the session, and he scored his century in 124 minutes.
Well, I don't think anybody in Australia who saw that either at the ground or on television would ever forget that.
No, you couldn't. It's a living memory, isn't it, with anybody that saw it. But what a cricketer Dougie was to do a thing like that. Most people would say, well, at last ball, I'll stick around out here and come out in the morning. Not Dougie. It was short, it'd go somewhere. The thing I always liked about Doug in his batting, he'd beaten all ends up by a ball and never hurt him. He'd say, well, that was yesterday. Come today again.
Well, Doug Walters, of course, was the crowd hero. If there's been a more popular cricketer in Australia in my time, I don't know. But that was the era also of Lilly and Tomo, the fast-bowling combination. They were fearsome in 1974, 75.
That was shattering, Norm. It was a pretty difficult situation. Both great bowlers. A sheer pace with Tomo's weapon, absolute pace, fire. And Lilly, more skillful, but still fast, very fast, but not quite the pace of Thompson, but ability to do something off the pitch and in the air. So the combination was, here you've got a man coming in, you know it's going to be like a rocket, and the other one's still coming through quickly, and he's moving the ball in the air. It was a shattering experience for those that were opposed, and they were a great combination.
Now, I think, too, that credit must go to the Australian team as a whole, in the sense that Lilly and Thompson were supported brilliantly in the field, particularly behind the wicket in the slips and the gully and by the keeper Marsh. They took their catches all the time. There's some phenomenal catches in that series.
Marsh, you mentioned, number one. Greg Chappell, I think it was Greg that told me that he only suffered one injury in his hands and he fielded slip most of his career. I think it was a ball from Thompson, and he broke the top part of his finger, second or third finger, and just trying to hold on to it. And he said it was frightening fielding at first slip. When the ball's on its way to you, you know, it's a horrible-looking sight. Even then, the ball's spinning at you at first. You know whether it's going to come down, high, and it was coming so quickly. Unless you made the first move, down or up, or to your right or left, you had no chance. And that was brilliant support, they feel. You make a very good point there, Norman.
It may be appropriate now to talk about captaincy during your career as a broadcaster. Who do you rate the greatest captains for Australia during that period? You're talking now about 50 years.
Well, I mean, when you give an opinion on that question, Norman, you've got to look at the opposition, the stand of the opposition, your equipment from batting and bowling point of view. You've got to assess that and say, no, well, Bradman was great. He had help from his batting and help from his bowlers. He didn't have them in 1938. They weren't a good combination. And then you look at him over the period he was captain. They won matches, and he set a great example himself. Then you look at Benno, a different approach altogether. Richie, a bit more flamboyant, excited when he got a wicket. You remember the years went by when they were hugging and kissing one another until that era passed, and then you came to Chappell. If you ask me, I can't say the best. I wouldn't like to determine it without looking very closely at against whom and what they had under their control. But I wouldn't like to separate the three of them. I think they were great Australian captains, all in their own right, all in the methods, a bit different, all of them. I would like to put them all together. Great, all three of them.
Well, let's move on now to a fine match, which was played, a historic match in the 1970s, the Centenary Test in Melbourne, celebrating 100 years of Test cricket. And you were broadcasting at the time. It was a great start to the game. Low score in the first innings by each team. Then Australia batted. England won a lot to win. A very big partnership between Randall and Amos. And you were the commentator at the vital breakthrough, and the bowler, in fact, was Greg Chappell.
Whilst Randall has the runs on the board, a great deal of credit should go to Amos. He's been the sheet anchor and kept the game under control, and his solid batting and good approach and good defence has had a marked effect on this particular game at this stage. And Chappell to Amos. Amos plays off the edge of the bat. They take a single. No, they don't. They started, but Hook sent a bad return back to Marsh. It missed him, but on the ground Marsh couldn't get it. They started for a single, and Randall sent his partner back with Amos halfway down the wicket, but he had plenty of time to get back and beat that return from Hooks. And so it's still 2 for 279 with Randall 140 and Amos 64. This ball from Greg Chappell to Amos. Beats him, bowled him, a good one, a slow one, whipping back on him. He may have touched it, I don't think so. I think it came straight through. It was either a touch or the bat or the pad, but it went in, and that was the important thing.
Well, that particular wicket made a bit of difference to that game, didn't it?
It did. It was only a loosening up ball, too. He just rolled one out, he said, and then it found it was a homer. And that was the turn, wasn't it? But I think England, in that last innings, had it under control. I thought not had it. And but then he played a very wild and silly shot, which was not necessary. But you can hardly criticise Alan Knott, because he was a very odd batsman. He did the most extraordinary things out there, got a lot of runs. And so he thought, well, I'll pick this one off, and missed it, and Lilly had him. But that was a turning point.
Because on that last day, England only wanted about 120 in even time with 5 wickets in hand, which is just about a one-day target, not an impossible situation. The pitch was still playing fairly well on that last day.
Yeah, it was. Well, I did a talk with Greg Chappell up in Brisbane. We were completing that book, the Bradman to Chappell book, the ABC published, and he wrote a very good article about that and how it did turn, but how he was concerned that England were getting away from them. To me, he was never very confident right up to the end that they were going to do it. But his approach to that one was, OK, well, I've got to toughen up here. And I think his captaincy was splendid in that particular match, in his direction, his manipulation, and the support he had from the field. He put them all together, and said, come on, we'll get hold of this.
Well, the end result was Australia by 45 runs, exactly the same score as the first test ever played 100 years before. But the decision to make Derek Randall the player of the match was a little bit questionable.
No, I didn't agree with that at all, Norman, although I was one of the panel. And the representative from the people who were doing this came around at 5 o'clock. Well, Randall had batted very well, but then from 5 o'clock onward, in went Lilly, and he finished up with 5 wickets. And he virtually won the match for Australia, with Greg pressuring him, and he didn't have to pressure Lilly too much. He was an all-out winner all the way. If he was in trouble, he'd fight them out. He did it so often as a great bowler. But I went back to them about 10 minutes before the game ended, and I said, I want to change my vote. And it was too late. They'd sent it down to the president because they like to announce it immediately after the game. And I said, look, I want to take Lilly, I want to put Lilly in. But no, they couldn't do it. And I think a British journalist, he was on the panel, he tried to do the same thing, but it was too late to get to the message to the president who was going to present the trophy. So I believe that Lilly won that, and I had time. But as a result of that, I've been on many panels since. I've said to them, I'll go on the panel, providing I don't give my vote till about 5 minutes before the end of the game, which they accepted. And that was, I think, other journalists and other people on panels asked the same favour.
Let's move on to the more controversial aspects of modern cricket. Today's cricket has changed since 1977 quite substantially, and the start of that change was celebrated, or in fact a good way to do it or talk about it is to just play a little jingle that everybody knows.
Come on, Aussie, come on, come on. Come on, Aussie, come on, come on. Come on, Aussie, come on, come on. Come on, Aussie, come on.
So, come on, Aussie, come on. That was the jingle for World Series cricket, the complete breakaway from the establishment. Pretty serious days.
Yes, it was an unfortunate happening. I dwell a lot on this in my mind. It need not have happened, you know. Had two bodies been more tolerant and understanding of what they were doing, I think we'd have had a better result. I'll give you the example that it was decided, well, not decided, it was decided before, but we got to know it I was down at Hove in Sussex when the announcement came through that the World Series had started and the players were going to join. And I was with two members of the board at the ground, and they were very upset, and very upset indeed. And they were we're going to lock the door and all this sort of thing. All the words were spoken, which all said in excitement. And then I read in the paper that Mr. Packer had made a similar remark. So there was a confrontation, complete confrontation from that afternoon onward. And I remember saying to these two members, one of them said, "I'll shut the door on him, we'll put him out of cricket." And I said to them, "Why do that? Why shut a door? Leave it ajar, never close a door." And had they not done that, both sides, I think then later both regretted it. I'm not sure about Mr. Packer, but I do feel that it was an unfortunate thing that Mr. Packer decided, or should I not say World Series cricket, perhaps I shouldn't use Mr. Packer's name, that they decided they would put test matches on in Australia when Australia had already organised a tour by India. And unfortunately, two of those matches coincided with the World Series matches, and so that was the end of it. There was no compromise available then, because they couldn't have played for Australia. They'd have to leave Australia and go and play for World Series. There was no reason at the time, as I think back, that they could have avoided playing at the same time as the Australian Test team were playing, and they could have put them together. But there was no tolerance, there's no understanding, there was no patience. It wanted someone with a sound and good mind to get together, a round table, and say, "Look, let's look at this right on the line." It was so easy, but I even said that at the time, why can't they change the matches? I don't think the board had a right to change because they'd already scheduled it. But Mr. Packer came in late, or World Series, I'll repeat myself there, should have said, OK, let's avoid it and see what attitude the board will take on that one. Who knows?
Well, it caused a tremendous rift in the game, and of course, from your point of view, that you were broadcasting the game from the establishment side. And with all those players away, Bob Simpson came back to captain Australia at the age of about 41. And that must be quite a remarkable performance by Simpson, to come back at that age after such a long gap and be successful.
I think he did a splendid job in that. I was very proud of him doing that, to come back and say, "We're Australia in trouble, we'll try and help." And he did it. He took the team away to the West Indies. That
series in the West Indies erupted one of the most violent confrontations ever on a cricket field, and that was the test at Kingston, the last test of the series. And it is probably one of your best-known broadcasts.
ABC, Alan McGilvray here. The riot's still going on. The police are out in the middle. A lot of bottles are still all over the ground. I don't know what Simpson's going to do, but the manager, Mr. Bennett's out there in the middle. Well, they're not in the middle. They're well away from where there's bottles and stones are being thrown. But the police are trying to clear. Now they have the riot squad out there with shields. I don't know what's going to happen here. I've never seen this before. But I'll just keep you informed. The time here now is about 7 minutes past 6. That it'll take some time before this game will get on the way. All the players are now sent together there. There's a big riot squad coming in with arm shields, and but it looks to me they've exhausted their ammunition. The police have moved in over in the stand on the right from where all those missiles came. And Bobby Simpson started to go off the field, but the former wicketkeeper, Jerry Alexander, came on the field and persuaded them to stay. Now the riot squad are going over to the troubled area. There are about 20 men, and they're armed too. Some of them are armed. They're out the double. There's several rifles in their hand. But there would be 40 riot squad now with arm shields, helmets, and 2 or 3 of them are armed.
The Kingston Test, Alan, 1977, that must have been a terrible experience.
It was a dreadful experience, Norman, to have these fellows running round, police with revolvers, firing in the air. I remember Freddie Brennett said to me, "Mac, they're only blanks." And I said, "Well, did you ever serve in the army, Freddie?" And he said, "No." "Well, I've got news for you." I said, "When something sings when it goes over your head, it's not a blank." And I'm sure it wasn't. But the whole situation became out of hand when they brought those riot squad on with automatics, I thought, now this is real trouble. I did my broadcast behind my briefcase. I had a wall underneath me. And then I put my briefcase in front of me because that was pretty well padded with papers, and I broadcast the whole of that through the handle of my briefcase. Rather, if someone just pulls a trigger, and that's it, and I think of better places to die than Kingston, Jamaica. So I was quite concerned. And when I gave the broadcast, I was not aware. I thought I was then talking to Australia. I kept calling Australia in and to let them know what was happening, but they were picking me up in Kingston, and that was heard there. And then the fellows that were down below me started to assemble around the box. And I tried to get out, and there were 8 or 9 fellows down under the steps. We were about 20 feet up. And they had big bricks in their hand. They kept saying, you go back in there, white man. And I got back in there, white man got back pretty smartly. And I had to stay there for, at least nearly an hour, I'd say, from memory. And then finally, 2 or 3 of them broke up from there, and I called out to Jackie Hendricks, who was the former captain, West Indies wicketkeeper, a great friend of mine, coloured man, and I said, Jackie, come on, let's go, let's get out and get across that pavilion, because we had to walk across every ground. The broadcasting pavilion was directly opposite the members, so lunch and into play we had to walk across the ground, not round. It was not really safe at that stage to walk round in amongst the crowd. And so Jackie said, no man, you died, no man. He kept saying, no man, in that way he talked. And I said, come on, well, let's go. And we decided we'd make a move. I just grabbed my briefcase and went across the ground, and about 50 surrounded me, and Jackie was surrounded by a similar number, and we were separated. And I kept pushing my way through, and I got to the pavilion, and I was not concerned. I said, just keep going, these fellows are all right. And then I got to the pavilion, and a police commissioner came up and he said, you, a white man, be fool, he said. And I said, oh, it was all right, Inspector. And he said, no, man, a knife, no one knows. I said, good grace, I never thought of that. And then I got into the car to go home, and I had, well, I suppose, a 10-minute drive to my hotel. It took me over half an hour, and they were bashing on the windows of the car with sticks, and I had my briefcase up against my right side, and they were calling out to white man. They'd heard the broadcast, you see, that I was describing this riot. And I didn't know they had heard it, but I pretty well realised what was happening. Anyhow, I got back to the hotel, and my goodness, I was glad to get back in those walls. And then I got a representative of the government came to see me, and the Australian government, and he said, we want you out of here. And I said, I've got to do a job in the morning. Well, he was quite persistent, and he said, I can't order you to go, I can't tell you to go, but I'm asking you to leave. And he stressed some very important things to me. And I said, well, what time is the plane leave? And I said, I'll have a car for you, pick you up. And they picked me up an hour before I should have been picked up. They said, you're better down there than here. So that was a very unhappy ending to a wonderful experience of 3 tours to West Indies. I didn't go back again. I asked the ABC. When I got back, I said, I'm under contract here, you can make me go, but if you want me to go, I'm not going to have a contract with you. I just don't want to go back there anymore. I didn't want the illusion of the beautiful times I spent there, marvellous times I had there, but this was all a period that I just wanted to blot from my mind. It shouldn't have happened.
The whole period in cricket, therefore, was turbulent in many countries, not only Australia, the West Indies. There were effects all over the world, all over the cricketing world. But it brings us to the point of the whole question of modern cricket, that you are not so much an establishment man, but a man who looks at the dignity of the game of cricket and always have done that, and the way people dress, the way people play. And we had during that period things like the modern period, things like the Lily Meandad incident over in Perth, the aluminium bat, misbehaviour on the field, all sorts of things going on which changed the character of the game. In fact, your book, you've written about cricket, is called The Game Is Not the Same, which is a pretty good choice of a title.
Yes, well, you see, the Lily incident of the kicking of Meandad, I've seen that film time and time again, and I just felt that it should never have happened. It should never have been created. But I do regret something I said when I was quickly asked. As I came out of the broadcasting box, someone put a microphone in front of me and said, what would you do? Would you suspend Lily? And I said, yes, I would. Now, it was not right for me to say that, because it's nothing to do with me, what the board do, and if they suspend a player. I shouldn't have made that comment, but it was just one I regret. There are many things, I suppose, over the years, words spoken too quickly, and I was a bit hasty, but I did not enjoy the happening of both players both Mandat and Lilly. Both were wrong, and it should never have occurred, and the umpire put it together and did a very good job. But I get back to this incident, and I think that was one of the most unpleasant incidents I ever saw in a cricket field. I never believed that someone would kick another player on the field.
Well, let's close off in the broadcasting sense with a wonderful occasion. It's your final broadcast at the Oval, Australia playing England in September 1985.
We're watching Taylor go in now. And Bennett sitting up. He's caught and bowled, and that's the end of the match. Well bowled. That was a slow one. He pushed forward to it and spooned the catch back, and England have won this test match and won it well. All out, 129. Bennett out for 11. Gilbert not out, no score, and the margin was an innings and 94 runs. Well, that's my story, and I say congratulations to you, England commentators, and thanks for your support you've given me.
Men change. Just listen to the loudspeaker announcing about Alan McGilvray.
Before retiring. He is, of course, the voice of Australian cricket, Mr. Alan McGilvray.
A lovely scene there with the crowd coming across the ground, waving at the McGillis. He stands up and waves them because they're all assembled in front now with the ropes keeping them back for the announcement of the various awards. But from all of us here in the box, the McGillis, a very happy retirement, and we shall look forward to seeing you when you come back to the Australian team. I'm sure you will, even if only just to watch. You'll always be welcome in the box. And thank you for all you've done for us.
Brian, I thank you, and just a few words of thanks to Peter Baxter and to all the commentators who helped me so much in this tour. I've worked with Brian a long time and with others, first time this tour, but I have had tremendous help from them, and the summaries they have given and their talks to me, and when I've called on them for an answer to a question, they've been absolutely marvellous. I thank you very much, without indicating any. You know them all, the commentators on this great program. And particular thanks to my friend on my right, Bill Frendel, for his great help he's given me throughout the tour. So thank you once again. And finally, before I leave you, I have received so many letters, and I'm so grateful for all you've said. I cannot possibly answer them until I get back to Australia, and that'll be toward the end of this week. And when I get back, I'll spend about a month answering all your mail. But thank you so much for all the kind words you said. And to you in the commentary box, thank you very much again, and goodbye.
Well, Alan, you've finally closed the book on a broadcasting career of 50 years from 1934 to 1985. I think it's appropriate that the last word on cricket's most respected and celebrated commentator should go to Australia's greatest player, Sir Donald Bradman.
I am pleased to have an opportunity of paying tribute to Alan McGilvray at the conclusion of his career as a Test cricket commentator. About 50 years ago, we played together on the cricket field. Alan could fairly be classified as a good all-rounder who had a splendid knowledge of the game, and his experience in the middle as competitor and captain was undoubtedly an asset when he turned to broadcasting, because there are many subtle differences between watching a game and actually taking part in it. By a coincidence, Alan ended his broadcasting career at the Oval, the scene of my farewell Test appearance. There was a vast difference in our respective performances. I lasted a mere 2 balls, whereas Alan's innings was only terminated by the end of the match, and then voluntarily. That one man could have a successful and honourable career at the microphone extending over 50 years is quite astonishing. It happened mainly because Alan stuck rigidly to those essential qualities of integrity and impartiality which brought him goodwill and acclamation from all cricket-playing countries. Not least was his understanding of the needs of those untold thousands of listeners who never had the opportunity to watch Test cricket, but who depended on the spoken word for their enjoyment of the game. A meritorious and noteworthy career has ended. I join with his legion of friends and admirers in congratulating Alan on a job well done.
ABC Sport Digital Radio, your home of cricket.